Welcome to another edition of Moral Side of the News. I'm Shawn Kaelin with the WHAS Crusade for Children, and as always, we're joined by an esteemed panel. Father Joe Graffis, the Archdiocese of Louisville, Reverend Harriett Akins-Banman, Centenary, United Methodist Church, Dr. Jamesetta Ferguson, St. Peter's United Church of Christ, and Rabbi Gaylia R. Rooks, the Temple. Our first topic today on Moral Side of the News. School districts are struggling to find substitute teachers. House Bill 397, passed this week, eliminates the requirements that substitute teachers have at least 64 credit hours of college to be a substitute teacher. If passed into law, that requirement would fall to 0 college credit hours needed. So panel, this would mean potentially having 18-year-olds teaching 18-year-olds in high school.
And how does that make sense? I think about a young person who might be interested in going into education, and that might be a good way to test the waters. But if the schools are already so stretched for instruction in the classroom, then who is going to be overseeing these young people, and without having any kind of background? Who is going to oversee them, mentor them, and help them set the students in their classroom up for success? So it sounds like a desperate plea or a desperate last stretch, to make things work in a really difficult situation.
Yeah, I think they are desperate, there's no question, but I personally think that this goes too far. If they want to lower the requirements, how many credit hours do they need in college?
It's 64 currently.
64, so maybe knock it down to 32 or even 18 or something. For me, one of the issues is not someone who's just graduated college. I think that there's a big dividing line, for better and for worse, but to put young adults or any adults in a classroom where they are responsible for all these kids, for their safety and well-being and their education but just the process of applying to college and having some minimal college experience, to me, really makes a difference. Unless, if someone, had been a firefighter or a police officer or something like that for a number of years, and had some maturity there and had a career,
life experience.
that maybe exceptions could be made in that sense. But I think, as I say, recognizing that we have to do something, I think raising teacher salaries would really go a long way in getting more people willing to be in the classroom. But I think that this is too much, too fast.
I would think that it could be nuanced in some way. We have a program now with elementary children after school where we have teenagers that are mentoring under the direction of our director. And the children are actually, they love learning and they love that youthfulness that comes through that process. And so it seems if the young people could perhaps be aides or something to the teachers, then that might be a good direction instead of allowing them to be full-fledged substitutes. But for some of the horror stories that I've heard with substitutes, they might even do a better job. I've heard stories where, they have brought in, 80-year-old people who have never been in the classroom before and put them in the class and expected them to do well, and the children not to do poorly with them in the class. And so the kids aren't learning, and you have an individual that is overwhelmed and stressed out in the process. So perhaps creating some type of program where young people can be involved, and it might lead to them wanting to become educators as well.
Yeah, I agree with all of you that, no college at all is disastrous. With classroom management problems being a real challenge, I hear from a lot of teachers and retired teachers who are coming back seems like trying to do some incentives for retired teachers coming back would be a much better situation. Or, Gaylia, as you said, sometimes people with experience with youth, but someone straight out of high school trying to deal with, I'm sure they wouldn't put him in a high school.
But you know what?
but-
It might be easier for an 18-year-old to do high school than to do middle school. Because, I mean, you don't there's so much going on here. I mean, 18-year-olds in charge of 17-year-olds or 19-year-olds in charge of 18-year-olds. That's one thing. But it goes beyond that. I mean, think about what goes on in middle schools today.
Yeah, I just think this is a bad situation, and we've got all kinds of problems with our schools, but I think we've got to take education seriously. And sometimes as a state, we're not doing that. There is money in the state. We just don't want to spend it for education sometimes. And
Well, but I have to push back on that because there have been requests by our governor to increase the salaries of the teachers.
Right.
And it has been denied by the state officials.
Right.
And so it's not that the money's not there, and it's not that there isn't a desire to reward our educators, but it has become a political pond.
Right.
Once again, with so many of our social issues that we have. And so how do we work around that so that the educators are paid for the services that they are providing for
And what do
our
you even
children?
mean work around that? I don't understand why we're not paying our teachers more, especially given that there's money for that. What's more important? I mean, our kids spend more time with their teachers than they do with their parents
That's
every
right.
single day. What could be more important to the future of everyone's child, of the Commonwealth of Kentucky, of the country of America, and of the world than having our children better educated, more stability, more.
I agree with you. I just don't know what the solution is. And I don't know that, obviously, we haven't found the solution because
Right.
we can't get it passed.
Very good discussion, and maybe the bus drivers should go in the classroom. Sets us
There we
up for the
go.
next story, like a very positive story out of JCPS this week. Great local story that went viral. It swept the country. It's even been picked up in other countries. David Muir at World News Tonight featured this story this week.
Finally tonight, here, the little boy getting on the school bus and the bus driver who noticed something and stepped in. America Strong. Tonight in Louisville, the elementary school bus driver who cares about the children on his bus, and he noticed something. Larry Ferris Jr. has been driving for Engelhard Elementary School for years. He's beloved. They call him Mr. Larry. When Mr. Larry picked up first grader Levi Carrier, he knew something was wrong. Levi was in tears, telling Mr. Larry it was pajama day at school and he didn't have any to wear. Mr. Larry dropping off the students and then going to Family Dollar himself, where he bought 2 pairs of PJs for Levi, hoping one of them would work. Tonight, the school sharing the story, saying Levi and his family are grateful. Levi saying Mr. Larry is nice and his heart is filled with joy. Right here tonight,
Good evening, Mr. David.
that bus driver, Mr. Larry.
We can educate and further push our kids in the right direction. Our school staff, our bus drivers, our principals, our teachers, they all go above and beyond doing for our kids every single day.
And tonight we have learned, following Mr. Larry's lead, the community now coming together, a local nonprofit raising money for Levi and his family to go shopping for new clothes. And Mr. Larry, the bus driver, says he will be right there with them.
My small gesture has become a huge impact, and I'm so grateful for it. Have a good one. Thanks for talking to me.
We love it, Mr. Larry. And that's right, Levi is an all-star. You see his PJs? Good night.
So how great is that? I heard from a contact at JCPS that Wednesday of this week, that story or Tuesday, on Wednesday, he was flown to New York to appear on the Tamarind Hall show.
Wow.
And then
The bus
he's
driver?
the bus driver, the student, and the student's mom. And then he was also contacted by an outlet in England, in Norway about this story. So
Incredible. It goes to show that the smallest act of kindness just becomes the pebble in the water that makes a difference. And in a time when so much of our news is divisive and polarizing, and we hear about schools always not in a positive way on the news, how lovely to have this gentleman do this act of kindness and just affect so many.
Yeah.
A great example for bus drivers, and they've been maligned a lot lately too. So, I mean, I think just appreciating that everybody, it takes a village
Does
to
take a
educate a
village.
child. I think we're familiar with that.
Yeah.
And certainly little things like this make a big difference, especially in little kids' lives.
Absolutely.
Follows up our earlier issue.
Right.
I can't remember, I think maybe it was Seth Meyers, one of the late night hosts, had a segment or has a segment. That's the kind of story we need right now. The kind of story, and this is the kind of story we need right now. And I'm thrilled that Mr. Larry is being recognized for what a difference he makes in the lives of all these children. When I read the story or first heard about it, apparently Levi used to always give him a big smile, "Good morning, Mr. Larry," and he just came on the bus and so Larry even noticed that this child didn't have his usual big smile. And just that level of caring, of going above and beyond, and it's just, I mean, obviously it touches the heart, it warms us, and Harriett, not to dismiss, I'd like to follow up on your pebbles and every little act of kindness and the ripples that it makes. And we don't always get flown to New York or appear on national television or whatever, but don't for a second think that every single action has its ripples, its consequences, actions for better and for worse. And if every single time we do something or say something, we would think, what kind of, what is this spreading out into the universe? Then
What's the consequences?
Right. I think it would definitely make this world a kinder, more compassionate place.
I just want to give a shout out to the bus drivers because, as you said, they have not always been presented in a positive light. And my spouse was a former bus driver, and for him, being a bus driver was a ministry for him. And so the kids, he just gravitated to them and loved on them and would help them. And there are a lot of bus drivers that way. And so it's not an easy job. And for you to see 40 or 50 kids a day and to be able to recognize that they're in need, that's a shout out to him and his level of compassion.
I also appreciated that when he was saying his words at the end, he included the whole school community, that it took all of them. I'm thinking how lovely that he sees his part and all of the parts working together for these students for which he cares.
Yeah.
Especially where we were just talking about teachers and what a difference they make. But, we all know stories of kids who are traumatized on the bus and bullied, and to know that this bus driver, and I'm sure many others, and God bless you all, really knows his kids and cares about his kids. And, it's just,
And I hear stories a lot of times from, janitors and other people who work in cleanup or something like that, are similar kind of stories, are so important to the kids. And they are, because it literally does take the whole village to raise a kid.
And the other element of this story is the bus driver didn't buy just a pair of pajamas. He bought 2 pairs of pajamas so that the little one could choose.
oh, I know, that was,
Oh my gosh, just acknowledging his, dignity and his personhood and being given a choice over pajamas.
And he also, at the end, and I don't say this in a bad way, but he could have been just so full of himself. I mean, it's national spotlight and all the rest of that. But he there was a modesty about him, just a genuine, you know, I care about the kids, and we all care, the teachers, the janitors, the bus drivers, the administration, and it's just an example of what can go right, you know, if we all just put in a little extra effort and compassion.
Yeah, you know, I can't leave this segment without us talking about the need, though, for this family. What else is the need there that needs to be addressed? And while, yes, it's a pair of pajamas and him feeling a part of, I am hoping that someone, some caseworker or someone else is looking at what else this family might need in order for their health and their livelihood to be met.
And not just this family.
Yeah, all
That's
of the
just an
kids.
example of, you know, I'm sure plenty of families, and you know, like Blessings in a Backpack, such an extraordinary group. They make such a difference, and I mean, they send food home over the weekends. Kids, where school breakfast and lunch is their healthiest meal of the day, what do they do in the summer? And they just jumped in and filled that gap. And I mean, we really can change the world if we really try, if we care enough, like Mr. Larry.
Let's talk cell phones.
Oh, must we?
We record this on Thursdays, so we walked into our office this morning, everyone woke up, and many of us could not use our cell phone. And what an awakening it was, that how much we take for granted this simple device, or not simple device, but complex device that makes our life simple. Did it impact many of you today? It impacted everyone, just about everyone in the
Yeah.
Crusade office.
Yeah, it impacted
Yes.
me.
Yeah, I know it was an AT&T issue, but it impacted I think all of the cell phone companies. I have Consumer Cellular, and I could not place a call, and I had hoped to have some call from others to just let me know that they were doing okay. But I could not receive that phone call, and so it led to a level of anxiety as a result of that. And I think we're so accustomed to having that little device that when we don't have it, you know, I think we can have the shakes almost because we don't have it or have the use of it. So I wish that was not the case. I think back to when we had landlines. What did we do when we had landlines and we didn't have cell phones? We weren't expecting those phone calls all the time, 24/7, but we've become accustomed to that now, and there's something wrong with
I think
that.
that was part of the problem with the Crusade office, that you just got rid of your landlines,
Right.
and therefore, without the landlines, your phones, there's no communication.
Right.
And I said, for any business or anybody else, that gets really scary.
Yeah.
In terms of how do we communicate with the outside world. And, so, I mean, I think it's a serious issue. I always think about, you know, terrorist groups or many other groups that, you know, when they can get control of satellites and things like that, this country, you know, because we're so dependent on our cell phones now, lots of bad things can happen. So I don't know what the cause of this is, and I don't think anybody does at this point, but it's a serious issue that somehow, how do we look at that?
Yeah, I'm glad I'm not the only one who immediately went to, oh my God, I hope it's not a terrorist attack. But I, beyond being clergy, and I mean, people call, you know, there's been a death or someone was rushed to the hospital and, you know, things like that, which I think makes it even harder for us. But I will own, especially now that I'm retired, so that doesn't happen as often, clearly. But I mean, I'm addicted to my cell phone. I will own that. And that's not a good thing. I'm not suggesting that. But I mean, I got my cell phone right here.
Does it work?
Yes, yeah. It was just as I was coming in the building, it started working again. But we have become very dependent. I mean, I'd rather lose my computer than my cell phone usage.
my.
I mean, I don't like computers, but I love my cell phone.
Well, it goes into I can also see a little bit of broader picture with what does this say about how it is that we communicate just overall. You know, so much of what happens is through texting. My daughter and I, she says that I talked to you last week. Well, no, we texted last week. That, for me, that is not talking with you. But there is, you know, a little bit of generational divide there. But how is it that we communicate, and how is it that the addiction to phone can, you know.
And texting has its problems. I mean, there's no tone. Just a week and a half ago, someone totally misunderstood something that I said. I mean, it wasn't a big deal. It was a good friend, but she just totally missed the sarcasm there. I use a lot of emojis to try to help with that. But yeah, I'd be happy if my daughter texted more often. I mean, call too, but you know, yeah. It's, you know, maybe 6 or 7 years ago, a 13-year-old girl becoming a bat mitzvah and had her cell phone, and I'm like, okay, we're going to leave the cell phone here because we're going out onto the pulpit and you're going to lead the service, and you know, this whole thing. And she goes, I'll turn it off, don't take it away. And I said, well, I'm not going to take it away. We're going to just, you know, put it right next to mine, right here in the back. And she's like, I have to have it on me. I get panic attacks when I don't have it on me. And I was thinking, as I say, this is like 7 years ago, 8 years ago, and I was thinking, you know, wow, 13 years old, and she recognizes that if she doesn't have her cell phone, even if it's turned off, so she doesn't get a call during a religious Sabbath morning service where she is becoming an adult in the eyes of the Jewish community, that she would have a panic attack. So I'm not that bad. I didn't have a panic attack this morning. I was just like really frustrated. A really good friend of mine just had a heart procedure, and I was there yesterday to pop in and visit just for a minute and see how she was. And today I was hoping to just call and couldn't do that, you know.
Well, when you talk about cell phones, I think it was on TV last week where school, they protested because there was
A bill to remove cell phones.
Yeah,
from the
bill to
classroom.
remove, and so they protested because they feel like they need those cell phones for safety and also to communicate. And so we are addicted to cell phones, but we're also in a time where I'm not sure how safe it is to be without one.
I was telling a story. I used to have an aunt who was over 100 years of age, and she would get frustrated with all of us cousins because we wouldn't write notes, and she liked to write notes, but you know, we were not. And so she got a computer so she could email us, because she said at least she'll respond to emails. And that's a few years ago. I don't think she would have liked texting at all, former school teacher that she was.
Well, an email killed the art of letter writing. I mean, there's no question. That was before text.
Right.
But, I mean, there are a lot of things that aggravate me about phones. Like, you're at dinner and, you know, having a discussion and we disagree. Someone whips out a cell phone to find the answer. I'm like, well, what happened to, you know, discussion, conversation, debate? And, you know, yeah.
Well, today you would have had to have one of those. Yes.
And it's also, it's also the misinformation that's put out there,
well, that's-
right? So cell phone is faceless when
Right.
it comes to some
Right.
information or much information that's out there. So weeding through that which is good for us, that which should
That's
be
really
left.
interesting. I didn't even think about, I'm not on any social media. I'm not even on Facebook. So, you know, X and tweets and TikTok and all that stuff. I didn't even think about that. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing.
Yeah, a lot of junk.
But when we see how it amplifies hatred and division and intolerance and disrespect and hatred, I mean, really downright hatred and, you know, everything, Islamophobia and homophobia and the whole thing about anti-Semitism and oh, I forgot to put my pin on this morning. But I mean, it does so much damage. And of course, now we find out that a lot of it comes from intentional misinformation from Russia, from various sources, you know, that whole thing with Hunter Biden, and it turns out it was the Russians interfering in our election system, the whole part of democracy. So I worry about that, but I don't blame cell phones for that.
We have about 3.5 minutes left, and if I didn't bring this up, my daughters would be mad at me. We have a panel. I believe, Father Joe, you've been around in Gaylia for a long time on the panel. We have 3 female ministers, clergy, on the panel today.
This is the first time ever.
Is it the first time ever?
First time ever.
I've tried to be
You're
quiet all
outnumbered.
day.
Hey, you've done a good job, Father Joe.
It's a
agreeing
red
and nodding.
letter day.
That's why I wore his red vest. Sister Eileen Egan of blessed
Right.
memory and I were the only 2 women, and once we were on the same show because the Catholics rotate, and you would have thought the earth was going to come to a halt. Yeah, so
Well, how far? I mean, if we've got about 2 minutes left. If we just want to talk about this moment, I mean,
certainly
we've
as
come
we've
a long
seen
way.
in some of the Baptist churches where they don't accept women at all, and of course I can speak from my own one that although our Pope is trying to say, we need to think about this a little bit in terms of that, but I mean, I think I'm grateful that we got 3 women on here.
I think women clergy and across the board have come a long way, but we continue to hit a ceiling.
oh, absolutely.
And it will always be there. It will be with pay. It will be with, in my tradition as United Methodist, sometimes appointments and how we're treated. And it's discouraging, but it certainly doesn't keep us out.
Yeah, but I also think that having 3 women here, it gives a different perspective to the topics that we're talking about. I think the lens that we look through causes us to look at things in a different way than our male clergy sometimes, and that's a good perspective to have.
I was just reading an article yesterday. This woman who was ordained 50 years ago. Well, I was ordained in '84. What is that, 40 years ago? Wow. Okay, I'm old. Anyway, it changes everything. I mean, it's changed Judaism. Having women rabbis has absolutely changed Judaism. I wrote a one-woman musical spiritual autobiography called The Stained Glass Ceiling when I first retired.
Thank you for the. Go ahead,
Right.
Father Joe.
No, I'm just saying I had a lady give a homiletic reflection on, of all things, the Immaculate Conception in our tradition. And Archbishop Kelly at the time said, "Can you give me a copy of that?" And I did send it to him, and he said, "Wow, there's no male who would ever have come at the topic the way she did." And she said, "That tells me something."
Right.
Which
Yeah,
is
our
typical of
language
him.
is often
Right.
different.
And all the people who have done the research and the studies and all the people who are analyzing the biblical.
Sorry to wrap it up. We're running out of time. That wraps up our show for this week. Thank you for joining us on Moral Side of the News.